Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has renewed his stance on supporting the government of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad.
We see how difficult the situation in Syria is evolving, particularly related to the threat by international terrorism. We remain committed to our policy of supporting Syria, its government and its people.
In a meeting with Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim in Moscow, Putin also expressed confidence that Syrians will defeat terrorists. He further called on the countries in the Middle East to help Syria with its fight against terror groups which have plagued the Arab nation. Later, Muallim attended a joint press conference with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. The Russian foreign minister promised to provide assistance to bolster the Syrian state that is in its fight against terrorism.
Russian and Syrian foreign ministers held talks in Moscow. In a joint press conference, Sergei Lavrov once again declared Moscow's readiness to support Damascus both politically and military. He stressed that political dialogue on the conflict in Syria is the only way to prevent the spread of the terrorism in the war-torn country.
Today, when the terrorist threat is imminent and it's spreading far outside of its borders, there should be no more excuses for stalling political processes. We express our solidarity with the struggle of the Syrian people against terrorist groups and rendering comprehensive assistance so that they are able to resist this threat, and we will continue to do so.
More than a year has passed since the US and its allies started their aerial campaign in Syria for what they describe as fighting against ISIL. But the Syrian foreign minister says the US and its allies are accused of spreading terrorism in Syria with their military and financial support for militants fighting against the Syrian government.
How many more must die in Syria, Yemen and Iraq for the Western coalition to understand their actions are wrong? Americans demand a political solution, but at the same time allocate billions of dollars to support terrorists. Recently, about 2,500 fighters were transferred to the south of Syria with the latest weapons in their hands, and the states do not hide their support for them.
Russian President Vladimir Putin, who met with Muallim earlier, emphasized that Moscow is ready to support Damascus in its possible decision on the creation of a regional coalition to fight the ISIL terrorists, as well as resolving socio-economic issues in Syria, adding that Russia will continue helping the Syrian people. Russia's position and peaceful solution to the situation in Syria remains constant. Moscow has always dismissed any suggestions that Syrian President Assad's resignation could help put an end to the conflict, urging regional countries to join Syria in its fight against terrorist groups. Marina Kartunova, Press TV, Moscow.